Welcome to our house, the House of Fi. At the House of Fi, we are all about achieving financial independence for families. Wherever you are in your financial independence journey, we want our house to be a place where you can learn and get inspired. If you are a parent on the journey to Fi, then come on in. We're glad that you're here. Here are your hosts, Wendy and Tamika.
Well, welcome back, House of Fi family. I am Wendy, one of your co-hosts. Also with me today is my fabulous co-host, Tamika.
Hi, House of Fi.
Well, guys, today we are talking with the power couple behind the blog, Learn, Hustle, Grow, Rob and Reshawn Lee. Rob and Reshawn are debt-free, mortgage-free, 40-something empty nesters building their real estate investment and travel businesses. They began their marriage 9 years ago, blending their families and money stories. What we hope to take a deep dive into today is how they successfully did this, what steps they took to get to debt freedom, and what they plan to accomplish going forward in their Fi journey. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Well, we're glad you guys are here. I had heard a little bit about your story, or actually saw a little bit about what you guys have been able to accomplish in another group. And when I saw that you both were in your 40s, that you have 2 children and are debt-free as well as paying off your mortgage, I knew that we just had to talk to you because you're exactly the type of people that we want our listeners to see, that, you know, this Fi journey is for everyone. And I just think it's so inspiring and it's going to help our listeners. So we're just so glad to have you. So why don't you guys just briefly give us a real quick synopsis of your story?
You did a great job actually with the intro there, Wendy. We were like, oh, okay, she's read the blog. So yeah, you summed it up for us. 9 years ago, we joined our lives and our finances. One of us a spender, one of us a saver. You want to guess who that was? Who?
No comment.
So that was actually our first challenge as a married couple, was how to manage money together. We discovered Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover, and that kind of helped to put us on the path to where we are now. That was the beginning for us, and helped us to get off to a strong start right away.
How did you guys find Dave Ramsey? Was it something that was maybe offered at your church, or did you just see him out in the media? What led you to decide that that is where you were going to go to get your financial house in order?
Great question. And I'll say this, both of you ladies are married, so you probably know that you and your spouse have different memories of the way things happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we always do.
But mine is the correct one.
Yes.
And so usually he'll give it to me. But it seemed as though once we got on this journey, Dave Ramsey was everywhere, because I heard about it via actually my manager at work. He was, even though he was a corporate manager, he had his law degree and got rid of 6 figures in debt using the Dave Ramsey model. And then while we were at church, we kept hearing about the Financial Freedom.
Financial Peace University.
Financial Peace University. So we know that it was one of the two. I remember it distinctly being through my boss, and just him sharing his testimony and his experience about the family paying off their debt.
I remember hearing it at church.
Did you guys actually complete the Financial Peace University?
We did not.
The Dave Ramsey Total Money Makeover was enough.
Yeah, the CD, just the CD.
The audiobook.
Yeah, the audiobook. We had 3 discs that came in the package, and I was taking a long commute, like 45 minutes a day, going home, to work, then back. And I listened to it in the car, and she listened to it. I'm not sure when, but.
Yeah, probably the same. And then we would just come together after
talk about it.
After we went through each chapter.
Yeah, since it was so great. Yeah, I was hooked, and I was a spender, by the way.
Are you still a spender, or you are a formed spender?
I'm a what do you call it? Functional spender.
There you go.
I'm a functional spender.
It is okay to be a spender as long as you are hitting your financial goals. That's my belief.
Yeah, my savings and my, our savings and being out of debt, that's priority. And then whatever's left, then I buy cool stuff. So.
Hey,
Hey, I can't knock that. So it's interesting that you both learned about Dave Ramsey at a similar time and that you were both interested in going down the path. But can you tell us a little bit about your money stories as individuals before you blended your family?
Okay, well, I come from a very poor background. My mother raised three of us, and we were below the poverty line out in Virginia. We lived in a city called Portsmouth, Virginia. And then eventually, once I grew up, I wanted out. I noticed we couldn't have the things that other kids had. And I just said, one day I'm gonna get out of here. So I joined the Marine Corps out of high school because I felt like I needed something extreme to help me get over the hump of being super broke. And the military helped me out, and they taught me a lot along the way. I blew a lot of money in the Marine Corps, which I wasn't really on any, FI journey then. I was just happy to have my own money and my own shoes and cars and clothes when I wanted to. And then eventually I met a girl. We had a baby, got us in more debt, got married, more debt. And then we broke up. First, I went to college after the Marine Corps. And they gave us the GI. I had the GI Bill, and that's what's supposed to help me with school. But like a knucklehead, I blew it. I blew all that on my living expenses out in California. I was living in San Diego, and then eventually got divorced. And I had most of the credit accounts and everything in my name, and I was stuck with it.
What you're saying is that when you get that money from the GI Bill, there's no financial education that goes with it. You can just spend it on whatever you want, or is that how it works?
Yeah. So if there is any education, I didn't know about it. If you're asking if they just cut checks, yes. I was in early 20s. And when I got out of the military, probably 23, 24. And they started saying, hey, you got the GI Bill, you signed up, you contributed to it. And the government, they give you another part of it, give you the majority of it, as long as you contribute to it and sign up. And then they just started sending me checks, and I was working during the day and then getting the GI Bill, going to school at night. And, I just kind of put the money all in one place, and we kind of just did what we wanted to do with the money and got a bigger apartment in San Diego, closer to the water and all this. And I wasted it all. My biggest regret.
I think that's still a very, that's just some crucial information, because I wasn't aware that that's how it works either. And so I just think that that's a very good lesson for our listeners, and to educate our listeners that, like, look, the GI Bill, it's there, but there are ways to mess that benefit up. And
yes.
So thank you for sharing that. And what about you, Reshawn?
So I'm going to dial it back just a minute, because Tamika said it was great that we were both on page with the total money makeover at the same time. Honestly, being a spender and a saver, we didn't immediately just move into agreement there. No. So, for other married couples or families that are listening, it required some prayer. We are believers, and being the saver, I was not comfortable right away with us combining our finances. I was a little nervous, having already pulled myself out of debt, to enter into joining everything the way we have it today. Our finances are 100% joined today as a result of us having gone through that total money makeover experience. And it has enabled everything that we've been able to do. It is the foundation of our financial achievement, being able to come together as a team. But it was not an easy thing to do. It. We don't want to make people believe that it was.
You said that you came into the situation with some debt that you had already taken care of. How far back do you want to go so that we can see where that debt came from?
Yeah, sure. So I was also raised in a single parent home, and we never talked about money growing up. I began working at the age of 15 in order to pay for my own clothes. And I didn't know necessarily that was because we didn't have much money. I just thought that my mother wanted me to be responsible. I didn't feel like we were broke, because I didn't know how much debt she had incurred just taking care of my sister and I on her own. So I graduated from high school and joined the Army Reserves right away, because I did know we didn't have money for college. I did know that. And the GI Bill was a big help to me. I also worked throughout college. And then they handed out credit cards. They gave out incentives. And this was some time ago. I don't want to date myself too bad. You guys have already, shared that we're 40 somethings. But on campus, they would give away gigantic candy bars and T-shirts and 2-liter sodas just to sign up for credit cards. And we had never discussed debt or credit in our family. So I didn't realize that this could be a problem. I just signed up and went for it. So between that and my student loans, that's kind of where my debt story began. I graduated from college 7 months pregnant with thousands of dollars in student loans and credit card debt.
So how did you go from that position to then coming into your marriage and having paid that off?
Well, becoming a single mom at the age of 23 is a real eye-opener when it comes to finances. At least it was for me. I don't know how, I can't speak for everyone else, but immediately I knew what I could and could not afford. And that was back in the days of, actually writing out, using a check ledger to keep up with your spending. And, it only took a couple of times for me to go in the negative and have bounced checks in the account before I realized I've got to make some changes. Between paying for the cost of daycare and a car note and my own apartment, it was just expensive to do all on my own. So I just, recognized that I could not have the things that other 20-somethings had. There were no designer bags. My first car was a Saturn, nothing fancy. I mean, I had daycare expenses and baby clothes.
Oh,
so
daycare is a beast.
Yes, it was. Even more so for folks who are paying for daycare now. But, even just back then, I got control of it. I began to call the credit card companies and negotiate my debt. So I figured out at some point that I could negotiate for half of what I owed them. And I went through that process until the credit card debt was all gone. And it took me 10 years to pay off my student loans. I just paid that on the regular course of action.
So now you have done all this work. You've paid off your credit cards. You've negotiated with the credit card companies. You paid off your student loans. Your baby is now 10 or beyond, and you meet this man. I can imagine the fear that and apprehension that you must have been experiencing. Tell us a little bit about that, because in no judgmental way, I met someone after my divorce. We weren't on the same page either, and I was very apprehensive about joining accounts.
So at the time we met, my son was 12. Our youngest son was 8. And I was a homeowner. I had a personal goal of purchasing my first home by the time I was 30, and I purchased it shortly before my 31st birthday. So I was feeling very confident about my finances at that time. While I had paid off my debt, I hadn't saved anything at this point beyond my 401k. I did invest in the 401k, but I didn't have any savings outside of that. When we got together, it was really it was very practical. We were both already in our 30s. We were in our early 30s. So we looked at credit report before we got married.
Premarital, yeah.
Yeah, we went through premarital counseling. We recognized the finances was a big issue for a lot of married people, and went through the credit reports and talked about our earnings. We shared all that before we actually got married. So that was a big help to have that open communication from the start. But our plan actually before we got married was a convoluted plan of percentages and how we were going to manage our money together.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So we were, rather than joining everything together, there was going to be some percentage of what I earned, some percentage of what he earned. Maybe he would pay this bill and then I would pay that bill, and all the accounts would be separate. And I was comfortable with that because it meant that I would still maintain control of everything that I brought in. But once we got married, it was as though God was speaking to us on a regular basis about two becoming one. And we were challenged to really address that.
It's a struggle. 30-somethings getting together, spending your own money the way you want to spend it, and then someone else's input comes into play, right? So
it was. And we're both extremely happy that we figured it out early in the marriage, because there were some big things that took place for us in that first year that could have left some resentment and some hard feelings had we not addressed it quickly.
I think premarital counseling with the added addition of the finances is so important because it's such a huge stressor. And, when you get into a marriage and you guys aren't on the same page about it, I mean, it could be disaster.
I think we were both thinking like, man, we might have made a mistake here. Funny now.
And guys, we're talking like the first 30 days.
First,
of marriage.
Yeah. Right after the wedding,
it blew up in our face.
Beautiful wedding in Mexico, and all the family came, and great photo shoot, and then we got home and fighting about money right away.
Here we are 9 years later.
So let's talk about some of the things that you guys have been able to accomplish as a couple.
I can list out the things. They seem to be kind of like a blueprint for what people who are getting into relationships should think about. We can start with the fact that you created a 6-month emergency fund together.
Yeah.
Why did you land on 6 months? How did you do it? How long did it take? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So initially, going through the Dave Ramsey baby steps, we started with, I guess it was $1,000. And we just recognized that we needed some cushion in case one of us should lose a job. And that's how we came up with the 6-month number. We thought that would be enough to hold us over if one of us was unemployed, because initially we were living on both incomes while we paid off the remainder car loan debt and student loan. So we recognized that if a job loss took place, this could be hazardous to our financial health, and that helped us big time.
So for the 6 months, I know that, so for everyone who's listening, the emergency fund, when you start Dave Ramsey, is about $1,000 in cash, readily available, maybe in a quick account that you can get to. And then after you pay off those debts, you build that up to anywhere between 3 to 6, and some people even do a full year's emergency fund, depending on what type of work you have. So for my household, we have government type jobs, lower chances of laid off, and my husband was way behind when we got married in terms of saving for retirement. He had gone through his own divorce and the money was split from his retirement, and then he had to spend the rest for a divorce. At this point, we wanted to put a lot of money in savings for retirement, so we stuck with the 3 to 4 month cushion. How did you guys determine where you would land in terms of the 6-month emergency fund, and how did you put the money aside?
So we got married at the top of the recession. So we met in 2008 and were married in 2009. So that probably prompted us to do, the larger of the two options as far as 6 months instead of 3. Is that at that time, everybody was a bit nervous.
Yeah, we were terrified.
Yeah.
We met at work and we saw people getting dropped off. Like they were doing like 130 people a week. We had to focus on the saving hardcore.
Yeah, that was we met at work and we both eventually left that company.
Yeah.
And and both companies actually did do layoffs at our new jobs at that time. So and we kept it in a traditional savings account because we did want it to be liquid and wanted to have access to it should we need it. One of the things we implemented, however, was what's called an and savings. And I don't know that they even do them at the bank anymore. But you cannot transfer money out of an and savings account into a checking account online. The only way to access the money is to actually go into the bank. And because it's an and account, it requires the signatures of both parties before the money can be withdrawn.
Yep.
Wow, that's a great tip. I hadn't heard about that in a really long time. So you're right. I don't know if all banks have them, but it's certainly worth asking for. If you can, maybe you can even just ask for those sort of special permissions. It does create that extra barrier to make sure that you don't just get into it on a whim.
Sounds terrifying to see all these people around you getting laid off. You don't know if it's coming for you. And so I can definitely see the 6 month being a conservative estimate for how much you want to have on hand. So then some other things that you did was that you both together, even the saver, decided to use credit to your advantage. So what exactly does that mean for you and how do you do it?
This was interesting, right? So Hubs was more focused on, building his credit score. He actually wrote posts about that on the blog. And being the saver, I was fairly conservative with credit. I only had, I think, 2 credit cards. I've always had a corporate card and then my own personal card. Now, my personal card came with rewards and benefits. And so we often use that for hotel stays. I also joined loyalty programs because I traveled for work, and that helped us a lot to be able to, gain points with hotels, cars, and flights. But being that he was focused on, the credit side of things, he actually continued to research and to work on better understanding the credit. And I'll let him pick up there and tell you more about.
Yeah, I always wanted I started noticing the different cards and, they would offer 40,000, 50,000, some of them even 80,000 points if you sign up for the card. And I just had to convince her that, hey, we should probably be getting some of these better benefits. If I can get 80,000 points, we can have 2 round trip tickets to Cancun or to Dominican Republic or maybe Hawaii. And so it took a little convincing, but once she saw the benefit from it, we would just kind of switch from one card to another. We have a couple of them now, but we make sure we keep them to a minimum. We use only those couple cards to get our points, and that way we can take a trip almost every single year based off of all the money we spent.
We always pay the balance at 30 days.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So you're never carrying a balance.
That's right.
No, absolutely.
Did you use any particular like programs or anything like that to learn how to do I think most people call it travel hacking, but did you learn that from anyone, or was it just kind of like a compilation of information that you had heard here and there?
I'm just like an extreme researcher. So just online articles. I don't know if you guys ever heard of the points guy. He taught me a whole lot, and he talks about all of this stuff. And he basically flies for free everywhere. And now he's probably got sponsors and on commercials and everything. But I learned a lot from just reading those, like the blogs and stuff.
And actually, we were doing it using my, corporate benefits before we knew about anything about travel hacking. Right. We just took it to another level once Hub started to do his research.
Yeah, once I started paying attention and said, wait a minute, we're using points. There might be better cards out there with better points. You've been using this for, 5-10 years. Let's look around and see what's what. And see who we use the most and which places we like staying at the most, which was like, Marriott and stuff like that. And that was it. And we, and who do we fly the most? American Airlines. So I said, let's check out the American Airlines card, and
well, your travel pictures look beautiful. I looked through some of those, and I mean, it definitely gives me the travel bug. At this point, had you paid off all of the debt, including the $28,000 in student loans?
At what point?
At the point that you started to use the credit cards for travel rewards.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We focused on the bills first and foremost. After Dave Ramsey, then we just started just like attacking the bills, attacking the 2 card notes, and then attacking the school loans. We were really laser focused on that stuff first. And then, we started relaxing and looking at the travel points and the hacking and traveling more after we got rid of those main bills.
So you religiously followed the Dave Ramsey formula for paying off debt. Is that my understanding, that you went through the smallest balance first and then just started attacking everything fiercely?
I would say, with the exception of the savings rules, we started saving for our kids' college in the 529 before we finished paying off the student loan. I do remember that when we married, we had to make the decision on whether or not we would have a child together. And once we decided not to do so, we took the money that would have been allocated for daycare, which at the time was about $1,000 a month, and we put that into a 529 to go towards the kids' college education. So we did that fairly early in the marriage, and we had not yet paid off the student loans.
I'm not opposed to that at all. I used to teach Financial Peace University at a church that I used to belong to some time ago. But that was one thing that I have to say where I felt that it tripped up my own savings plan. My student loans were so significant, and it was almost debilitating thinking that, okay, I can't save anything until I pay off these student loans. And so I had to just kind of say, you know what, his plan is great. It's an excellent tool. I highly recommend it to everyone. I had to depart from that and say, I need to start savings because we're older, in our mid 40s now. And there's no way that we could not start saving because our timeline for retirement was quickly approaching. So I think that people have to look at their own personal circumstances and decide what works best for their family. And as long as they're, doing all the right things, the order becomes less important.
I think so. We also never stopped saving in our retirement accounts. So throughout, we always saved in our 401ks, even the entire time when we were paying off debt.
And we saw a couple holes in Dave Ramsey's plan because we were following it, and then all of a sudden we noticed one thing was missing. What about like the money that I want to spend or she wants to spend? I like, certain gadgets and whatever, and she liked whatever she liked. And all of a sudden I say, hey, how are we he didn't mention anything about your own personal money. So that's what we modified that part.
Yeah, it's personal finance for a reason. It's better to do his plan and make a couple of personal changes than to not do anything at all. There are just so many things that you guys did to just put it all right, to set the ship right. The last thing that was on this list that I really love is that you have paid off your home. And, there's so much to think about when you attack this for many people, the same way that you say, oh, you'll always have a car note, is what they think about their mortgage, just let it ride for 30 or however many years. And so can you please tell us a lot about how you did that and what it feels like to be on the other side?
Well, we'll start with, it feels awesome.
Awesome.
We do love having, gotten over that hurdle. For us, the key to paying off our current residence was our real estate investment. I shared with you earlier that I was a homeowner when we met, and our first home was also our first rental property. And when we turned that house into a rental property, we had already aggressively gone after paying that mortgage down as a team. I owned it for 5 years before we met, and then we were in it together for 5 years, so 10 years total. And then we had an opportunity to refinance it as we moved out through a veterans program that allowed us to do so without paying any kind of closing costs. Yeah. So that was just a benefit that we had at the timing, as both of us are veterans. Then we purchased our home in 2013.
At the bottom of the interest.
Yeah. So 2013. So let's say we had a 3% rate on the first rental property with the refinance and refied that for 15 years. And then we purchased this home with a 15-year mortgage at 2.85%. So a lot of people would say, well, why would you pay that off with such great interest rate? Well, when we initially began our plans as real estate investors, Hubs had the vision of being a real estate mogul, right? So his idea was that we were going to, buy a lot of properties, as many as possible. I mean, he would have bought several a year if we were both on page with that. I moved a little more slowly, and I agreed that we would purchase one investment property a year for the next 15 years. And that would have gotten us to retirement at 55 comfortably, or at least leaving corporate America with me turning 55. And we, as we went along, we just thought, wow, what could we do to make this happen faster? And that was actually Babe as well. He was doing the research for early retirement. Early retirement before 55 never dawned on me. I was the traditional corporate employee where I never thought about leaving any sooner than 55 because there would always be a need to work is what I thought. You would always have bills and expenses. But I will tell you, my husband is the constant learner, and he researches anything and everything. And he kept going until he finally got my attention and was like, I need you to listen to this podcast. I think we could be doing some things differently that would have a significant impact on our vision, on our plan. And finally, honestly, guys, I'm almost ashamed to say it. He was probably researching and learned about this a couple of years before I gave it any attention.
Oh, no.
Wow. Well, good for you, Rob, for your persistency. Yes.
I am a persistent man.
Yes, he is.
That's how I got my girl.
So he was so persistent in that regard that finally, once I began listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast, I started to learn about the different financial vehicles on the back end. I think that's something that's critical to being a real estate investor, is understanding how the financial vehicles work. We learned so many different techniques in addition to being, becoming super motivated by everything that we heard. We just revised our entire strategy. We learned about what's called the
cash out refi?
The cash out refinance. I had a brain freeze there for a moment. Good thing we're so in sync.
And the 1031 exchange.
Yeah, 1031 exchange. Throwing all these terms out there. Hopefully the folks who are listening to the podcast will go out there and take a listen. But it was through the cash out refinance that we paid off this mortgage. We did the cash out refinance on our first rental property. Pulled out the equity and used that to pay off our current home. We still own both properties, and our tenants continue to pay off the mortgage at the other house.
So I wanted to ask, so you made this goal to purchase one house every single year. Have you done that?
We have not done that. Our strategy slightly changed. We did it first. We started that. But as the market in Texas changed, then we had to, slow down a little bit, right? Because we couldn't buy in the same areas for the same amount of money that we wanted to every year.
We actually accomplished that for the first 5 years.
Yeah.
But the way that it happened was, like I said, the first year we flipped our first home. The second year we purchased one investment property. Then the third year we purchased 2 properties.
That's right.
So that's how we got to year 3 and 4. We actually purchased 2 properties in 1 year. These are all single family homes. We did them all on 15-year mortgages. Yeah. Then in the 4th year, that's when we ran into the challenge of not being able to purchase within the budget that we'd set for our investment properties. And we actually became part of what's called a real estate syndication. Yeah. We learned about that through Bigger Pockets as well. So we invested in a syndicated deal.
It was like a apartment complex, and we were just putting our money into it.
So it was our introduction into multifamily.
Yeah.
So that was that year 4?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was year 4. Then year 5, we started purchasing our own small multifamily. And here in our market, we couldn't find what we were looking for. Right. So we decided that it was important to be open to looking outside our current market, and we researched where we're from. We researched his area, the Virginia area, Norfolk, Portsmouth, Virginia Beach, and I'm originally from Chicago. We also looked into the Chicago area. We were fortunate enough to find a property in Norfolk, Virginia, and we used the 1031 exchange method that we mentioned earlier, where we sold one of the properties here and took all of the profits from that sale and invested in a 6-unit building in Norfolk. And that's where we are today.
Oh, my goodness.
And no taxes.
Because of the 1031 exchange.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
So just really quickly, so the 1031 exchange is when you sell one building or house, it doesn't really matter what type of property it is, but you immediately, within a certain amount of time, purchase another property. It could be a multi, it could be another single.
The rules state that the new investment has to be larger than the first. So you have to move it bigger.
Yes. And so when you're in a single primary residence or whatever type of primary residence and you sell that home up to $250,000, I believe, if you're single, or $500,000 of profit in that sale is tax-free. But when you're selling a second home or second investment property, this is a way to do that without paying those taxes, right?
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I was furiously writing notes, so I'll pick one question. So when you were purchasing the investment properties, were you following the 1% rule?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so can you briefly explain to our listeners what the 1% rule is when you are investigating properties that you might want to purchase?
So the 1% rule says that you must be able to rent the property for at least 1% of the overall cost. So for example, our initial budget for single family homes in the area was $150,000. So that means the unit must rent for at least $1,500 a month.
I just wanted to go back because it sounds like you did this fairly methodically and did one step first and then the next step and then the next step. So the first way that you were able to get a property was to do the cash out refinance. Is that right?
Actually, no. So our first property, remember, was our first home.
Right.
But we did not do a cash out refinance at that time. We actually so we didn't have to put any money into that, right? Since we'd already paid the mortgage down 10 years. What we did was we refinanced it from a 30-year to a 15-year. So that's what we did on the first property that we left.
And from $150,000, it was down to $70,000 by that time when we refinanced it.
Then we purchased our home using our quote unquote emergency fund as the 10% down payment.
Okay, so that was the step I missed.
So we used the emergency fund as our 10% down payment on a 15-year mortgage that we had for our current resident. Then we went to rebuild our emergency fund from our bonuses and any excess cash we had after our bills were paid. And we continue to use that emergency fund to purchase property every year.
Emergency, yeah.
Right. We're doing air quotes over here. We will build the emergency fund and use it as a down payment on the property.
We were feeling really comfortable, like ladies, really comfortable.
Yeah, by that point, we were like, oh, we got this.
We got this, yeah.
So with a single family home investment property, the down payment that was required at the time was 20% in order to avoid PMI.
Okay, so you would say, okay, we want to buy another property. You'd have your emergency fund built back up by then, up to the 20% you needed. Then you get the investment property, and then you start the process of building up the emergency fund again to about what you think that you would need to get the next property. Is that right?
Yeah.
Correct.
By the next year, that was the goal, try to build it up. And we made it a game. We just said, hey, how much can we save by June of next year? And in the summer, right away, look at another house. And it was really fulfilling, right? Than spending all my money. like you.
Well, you were spending it, but just on a huge thing, like
not blowing it on something I can't see, right?
Right. Now you own a multi-family in Norfolk?
Yes.
We do.
Okay. What was that process like, buying an investment property out of state? Did you go and visit it? Did you have people on the ground that were kind of doing the due diligence for you? What was that process like?
Yeah. Reshawn, she researched the realtors out in Virginia. And, I have family there too. So we just kind of had them in the background. They didn't really do anything, but so she found a real estate agent, and it was she was looking for like an investment real estate agent, people who would understand, hey, not just a real estate agent, but people who invest also. And she found one, and this guy, he was great at the time. And then he found us a place. He looked around, found us a place, and, and we kind of liked one, and we took the money and, we just kind of rolled it over from the 1031, and we had to go down and do the paperwork.
We did everything remotely. The out-of-state process, Babe's right. We did all the research online to locate a realtor who was also an investor. So he understood what a 1031 exchange was and what we were trying to accomplish. So he knew that we had limited time in which to purchase the property. That's what was key about being able to get it done. 45. You have to identify the property you're going to purchase within 45 days of the sale of the first property.
Yeah.
And you can actually list multiple properties. And you can also buy multiple properties for that amount if you choose to. But once you list and identify the property, you cannot change it. You have to buy one of those properties on the list, or you forfeit the ability to execute the 1031 exchange. So there are definitely some intricacies in understanding that plan to be successful at getting it done.
Process,
yeah. We were very fortunate that we were able to find something, and we did not go see it before we purchased it. We used Google Maps for the area. The realtor took photos and did video. We did pay for a third-party inspector to inspect each one of the units. So that was our way of doing due diligence. Also, Babe invested in the Bigger Pockets Pro membership, and we utilized their calculator to run our numbers.
To make sure it was a good deal every time we looked at a property. You just plug in the numbers and they let you know if it's a good buy or not.
Nice. That's an excellent tip. For your multifamily, are you using property manager or?
We use property manager for all of our places. We don't want to deal with that. So we'll take the hit on the 10% or negotiate less if we have more than one house with each property manager.
And are all of your investment properties cash flow positive?
Yes. We were fortunate at the time in which we purchased our properties so that they were, timing. How you buy is everything in our experience, being able to purchase the property at the 1%. But also it was our personal rule that the rent had to cover the management fees so that we would not come out of pocket on any expenses on a monthly basis. So the way we purchased the properties allowed the rent that the tenants pay to cover the mortgage, the insurance, the taxes, and the cost of a property manager. When we began this journey, we were both in full-time corporate jobs, so there was no way in which that we could be taking calls about broken toilets.
No way.
So, Reshawn and Rob, why did you opt to pay off the mortgage sooner as opposed to maybe taking that extra money and investing it?
So honestly, Wendy, we went back and forth on this question quite a bit before making our decision. And what we realized was that we've met a lot of people who are former real estate investors. At some point in the game, they got over leveraged, the market changed, and they pulled out. And most of them never even paid off their own house. And we just thought, if we ever have to walk away from our investments, at the very least, we want to walk away with our home paid off.
Yeah.
We just decided that the peace of mind that comes with knowing that you don't have that big mortgage, a 15-year mortgage, was much more important to us than the ability to buy more property at this point.
Yeah, I was going to say peace of mind also. Yeah.
I love that answer, and because if we do things by purely the mathematics, of course, that's not the one that makes the most sense. But having that peace of mind is so important. Our home is our place. Our home is our safety. It's where our family resides, and it's the biggest stressor when you get stuck in financial situations. Is how am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to pay my mortgage? So I completely understand that. And that's something that my husband and I talk about often. This mortgage is our biggest expense. If something were to happen, God forbid, what do we do about this mortgage? So I'm completely in agreement with you guys that you do have to weigh the peace of mind factor. And
for us also, we recognize that the mortgage being the largest bill we had, it was also the reason we needed to stay in corporate.
Yeah.
That's a struggle, I think, for a lot of people is how do you, if you can reduce that one expense, that one large expense, that's life-changing. I mean, that changed your monthly expenses dramatically, and you can do so many things. Yeah. So it's one of those that Curtis and I talk about often is, what if we didn't have this mortgage payment?
Right. It was like our only liability, Wendy.
Right.
I say we see it in the Choose FI group all the time. Everybody's trying to make the decision. And I always ask, if you pay off the mortgage, can you leave corporate?
Right.
That kind of was the deciding factor for us. If you can leave corporate by paying off the mortgage, then, and that's your goal, then why delay, your goal? But if it doesn't change things, if it wouldn't have changed that for us, if we still needed to go to work for someone else every day, then maybe it wouldn't have been as valuable to us to have it paid off.
Right.
So you guys, how do you like being empty nesters?
We love it.
What is the empty nester life like? What's your daily life like?
Honestly, it's like dating all over again. We knew each other, but we're starting fresh because now we get to know each other a little bit more.
Well, it's like it's just a different phase in life. Your identity for a big part of your life as parents is wrapped around your children.
Yes.
What are their activities? What do they have going on in their lives? And then all of a sudden they're gone, and well, who am I?
and they will be gone.
Right. Who am I? And then what does that mean about who are we together?
Absolutely. The way you relate to one another when you're focused on the kids is completely different from the way you related to each other prior to the children. And you have to figure out how to get that back once the kids move on and go to do their thing.
Yeah, but we always tried to make sure that we kept in touch with each other, and we tell them, hey guys, we're going on this date night or whatever. We always stay focused because, we've seen so many things go bad with, celebrities and people we know and everything else. So it's like, you got to stay focused on that because one day they will be gone no matter who you are.
Well, and then you guys are doing it in your 40s. It's like,
oh my God,
healthy and young, and you have so much life left. What an exciting time for you guys.
You guys are such a joy to talk to. And I mean, honestly, your energy is so great. And then you're just so in sync that you're even finishing each other's sentences. It's really awesome. I love how the growth and the becoming a unit. If you could talk a little bit just before we start to wrap up about how you take this learning that you've done over the years and teach do you have is it two boys?
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you involve them in this process? What do you teach them? Do they go see the properties with you? Do you have your budget meetings with them? Because we both have children and we try to teach them. How do you involve them?
I will say that early on, we did not involve them in the money discussions, and or young, the way that people do now. Now that people are familiar with the concept of FI, which we didn't learn anything about until 2017. We were on this journey and did not know anything about the FI movement. But one of the things we did implement was once they turned 13, each of them turned 13, they had a budget for birthdays and Christmas. They knew that there was $200 to be spent, and they could create the list for what they wanted. They should do it in the order of priority because we would not go over. We taught them to go online and shop using promo codes so that they could get the most out of their $200 that they might be able to achieve. So that was how we introduced the concept of managing spending with them. Then we talk to them often about money, as far as money equating to time. So we talked about earning minimum wage and what that means to go out and spend $10 on something if you only make $7.50 an hour. We had those kind of conversations. Our children did not work in high school the way that we both did.
Right.
Our oldest was a great student in high school, and when he began to work, we saw that there was a struggle as far as being able to complete advanced placement coursework and be able to go to work at a McDonald's. There are certainly kids who do it. That wasn't his strength. So what we believe is that it's a great idea to introduce kids to the idea of managing money as early as possible. But that was one of the areas where I'd say that we fell short. We did not introduce them to the idea of managing their own money right away. We talked to them about money quite a bit as they got older. We've had lots of conversation. But as our oldest went off to college, we recognized that it was only through his working and earning money on his own that he actually began to have a better understanding of what a dollar was. And it's still been a struggle.
Yeah.
As they get older, they're making their own decisions with the money that they earn at work or what have you, and they're not frugal.
No, they're not listening right now. No matter who it doesn't matter who your parents are sometimes. But one day maybe they'll, since we've talked to them about it so long, maybe they'll come back and say, "Oh, let me go ahead and read that book Mom and Dad gave me," or whatever. But it's a constant work in progress, guys. It's just we consistently preach, but it's falling on deaf ears right now. So.
Oh, I bet you they're listening more than you think.
I hope so.
I think that, right now, maybe they're in kind of that phase where, I'm going to do my own thing because I'm grown, but I bet you that those seeds are there and that soon, hopefully soon, you'll get to see them sprouting. All right, guys. Oh my gosh, this time flew so quickly. We are at the time to wrap up, and I know that Tamika and I both have just so many more things that I'm sure that we'd like to ask you, but we'll have to save that for another day. So are you guys ready for our wrap-up questions?
We're ready.
All right. Okay, so this question, one of you pick who wants to go first, and then the other can answer. What was one money lesson that you learned growing up, good or bad, that you have carried over into your FI journey?
I don't have any money lessons. Don't be broke. I don't know.
Well, that's the lesson, right? That's the lesson, is that maybe talk to your kids about money, right?
Yes, communication about money is key. We never talked about money growing up.
Yeah.
And I think that it is crucial to have those conversations.
Awesome. Okay. And then what are your favorite life hacks that either help you save money or that bring you joy?
My favorite one might be a small one, but it's very necessary. I think, especially for couples, I mean, it could be for couples or for a single person. You should have your own allowance money, I think, or like blow money, so you won't feel guilty about spending it, because that was one thing that wasn't in the Dave Ramsey plan. And like I said, right away, we didn't know, hey, what about my money? What about the things I want to do for fun? Or, my wife, she loves going out for brunch with her girlfriends, right? And, drink lattes. And I was like, hey, wait, how many lattes are you going to drink this week? You're kind of cutting into the company money here. And so always have an allowance, something you can blow for the 2 weeks or whatever until you get paid again. I think that was a big one for us.
I love it. So what are these gadgets that you're buying?
I don't know, drones, like PlayStation 4. That's one.
Well, I would think those are more than just little gadgets.
Yeah, camera equipment. I love cameras. I love taking.
That's why they must come out of an allowance, ladies.
You're a techie guy. You like all the fancy techie stuff.
Yes, he is a techie.
I like the footage.
So I'd say for myself, as far as life hacks, I feel like there have been so many things that we've learned over this journey. But I will try to net it out. One, I would say the importance of being open to learning new things, to opening your mind. Like I said, my husband is a consummate learner, and he has really opened my eyes to the importance of being able to look beyond the day-to-day, pulling your head up from work in order to learn more about how you can improve your own life and grow your own business versus working so hard towards achieving a corporate goal. So that was definitely a big one for me. And then also just not giving up. So many people quit before they reach their goals. If you set goals and work to accomplish them, you'll be amazed by how much by just how far you can get by just getting to the other side. I think that's been really key. I think just for both of us throughout our lives.
Absolutely agree. We can never know enough. And so are either one of you reading something, or is there a podcast that you're listening to right now that has really been impactful, and what's your takeaway from it?
So honestly, we are not we're not reading any financial books or podcasts right now. We are listening to travel podcasts right now in preparation for our, new year, the new year in 2019.
Oh, well, so do you have a travel plan for next year?
Yes, we have a big announcement we haven't really made yet, but we'll tell you guys. It's going to come out anyway. So being that we are really good position right now, and the youngest just graduated and everything, and the boys are going to be totally gone doing their thing, we decided we're going to take a break, pull back from the jobs. We are both leaving corporate, and we're going to travel. The goal is to travel for the year of 2019 to all the countries that we've always dreamed of.
Wow. That is incredible. That is so awesome. Have you mapped out kind of where you're going to go first?
Yes, we have one-way tickets to Buenos Aires, Argentina on December 30th. And then we're just going to kind of move from there and go, South America, Machu Picchu and all that stuff. And we're just going to kind of wing it. As long as we're healthy and we don't need to come home, we're probably going to keep going. And if we get burned out, maybe we'll come home. But if not, if the house rents out and everything goes well, and we make a little bit of extra money doing that, then we'll probably just keep going and invite anybody who wants to join. Meet us out there.
Is incredible. I think that is that's the apex of kind of what people strive for. So, you did all this hard work, you paid off all your debt, you paid off your mortgages, you set up yourselves with your investment properties to be in a position. And now here you are in your 40s, and you're getting ready to journey around the world.
Yes, ma'am.
How incredible is that? Do you want to just pinch yourself?
We're super excited.
Yeah, we're still in shock ourselves,
We're really focused on planning for it right now. So we're excited every day.
We're buying little backpacks and stuff, trying to figure out what we need to carry and how much we can carry on the plane without checking bags, and we'll figure it out one way or the other.
I am so excited to watch that, and I really hope that your intention is to chronicle that on your website so that
that's
we can
the goal.
Watch. Okay. And so is that the best way for people to get in touch with you, is through the website?
So learnhustlegrow.com, Learn Hustle Grow on Instagram, and we are in the process of starting a YouTube channel. under Learn, Hustle, Grow as well. So we will be recording via video as well as via photography. Hubs is a techie and he does really well behind the camera. So wish us luck with that venture.
Oh, if your current photos on your website are any indication, it's going to be just beautiful. We can't wait to watch it.
Thanks.
Well, thank you guys again so much for coming on the show. This has been a pleasure, and we just know that our audience is going to fall in love with you guys as much as Tamika and I have. We're like totally fangirls right now.
Yeah, the thing you guys don't know is that we have like a private chat and we're just like, I love them inside.
Oh,
Well,
thank you.
if you guys want to meet us out on the road, I am a travel agent, so don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll book you guys some trip.
We will definitely be watching and living vicariously. So have a little sip of wine on the beach, or take a little hike with some great pictures for me, because that's what I'll be dreaming of. And make sure to tag us.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, House of Five family, that brings this episode to a close. If you've liked what you've heard, please subscribe in iTunes, as well as any of the other platforms you've found us on. We're on just about all of them. Also, please leave us a written review. They help us to know what you're liking about the show, what we can do better. And for every 5 reviews we receive, that's written reviews, we will give away one of our favorite reads, and that is currently Kids' Money Habits by Amy Coit. It's a great book full of great information, both for parents and kids. Don't forget to check out our show notes on the webpage. There is always bonus information there that didn't make it to the show, and we strive to create good content on there. So please head on over to the website and check that out. Finally, you can find us on Facebook. You can either like our page, or you can become part of our Facebook group. It's a private group, and in there we have ongoing discussions about each episode as well as other topics within the FI community. It's a way for us to get to know each other better, and for Tamika and I to learn exactly what you want to hear more of, or questions that you have that we can address with upcoming guests. Again, thank you for listening. Come back next week. We're glad you're here.